US officials say there's no connection between a foiled plot to attack a train in Canada and the Boston bombings. But in both cases, it's not clear if the suspects have links to known terrorist groups. That raises the prospect of an increase in homegrown attacks. Joining me now is international relations expert Robert Patman. Robert, starting with the terror plot in Canada.
Morning, Simon.
Good morning. How serious a threat was that?
Well, I think it must have been quite serious. The Canadian authorities had been monitoring these two individuals. We don't know the, we don't know the nationalities of the two individuals yet. We know they're not Canadian nationals, but we also know that they were legally in Canada, one of whom was a PhD student. They had been monitoring them for over a year, and clearly they thought, although the operation wasn't imminent, they thought there was a definite plan in the works. They also said, the Canadian authorities, that these two individuals were not just being supported by an Al-Qaeda, the Al-Qaeda network in Iran. They were actually being directed, and of course this has led to a furious response from Iran, which says that the whole idea is ridiculous.
All right, so Iran's denying any Al-Qaeda links there, but they're trying to link them to Al-Qaeda on the international scene for the Canada case. In the Boston bombings, the links there are sort of even murkier about whether there's any international influence on the actions of these brothers.
Yes, the Tsarnaev brothers, their family comes from the Chechen region of Russia, and it's clear that the elder brother, Tamarin, went back to Russia to visit his father in 2012. And the confusion here is they are being initially, the younger brother, Johar, has said that his brother was the inspiration and there was no outside links. That's what's emerged in the early interrogation. But the Russian authorities are very, very sceptical about this. They were the Russian authorities tipped the FBI off in 2011. They interviewed the elder brother, the elder Tsarnaev, and they found he had no international links or particular militant agenda. Of course, we know now that he did. But I think one of the issues that's raised by this whole episode is whether the FBI is actually seeking to minimise the international involvement in order to minimise their own embarrassment that they had been tipped off and not responded fully to the tip.
Okay, and is it a problem for the FBI with the small, say, two-man self-radicalized cells, as they call them, being hard to detect?
Yes, let's be quite frank. Much of America's counter-terrorist campaign is based on external terrorists getting into the United States and carrying out terrorism. What is quietly alarming for this is that Americans, but people have been, I mean, the younger Tsarnaev brother, Johar, is a naturalized American. People who are known and friendly with other Americans can actually be capable of carrying out these sort of terrorist actions. And that, of course, means much greater vigilance, I suppose, within the United States. And it refocuses, from the American government's point of view, the whole counter-terrorist effort.
Right, so they've been focused, as you say, on that sort of the internationals coming in to make attacks on their homeland, and so they've got their own people, as it were, these naturalised citizens. Do you think that this is going to have some sort of response in terms of gun laws or legislation for how they address and try and track down these sort of self-radicalised cells?
Well, I think there's already extensive monitoring. Let's be quite clear, is that the FBI did know that the elder Tsarnaev, Tamirin, was actually looking at radical Islamic ideology on the internet, and they interviewed him about 5 times in 2012 on this. But I suppose that the response to your question is they'll be trying to redouble their efforts and look, perhaps profiling young men in particular who seem to be alienated and disaffected and who may have an Islamic past. But that's a pretty big job. I mean, there's a lot of people who might potentially fit into that category.
Okay, Robert Patman, thank you very much for your time this morning.